Is the state of play we've been waiting for canceled? Your PS5 is getting a graphics update. The PSVR2 has been seen in the wild, and PS5s are unfortunately getting more expensive. It's a jam-packed episode of the weekly PlayStation news show because there's a ton of stuff happening in the world of PlayStation. First up, let's talk about the state of play we've been waiting for that's supposedly going to have the release date of God of War Ragnarok alongside the DualSense Pro announcement. Two heavily anticipated things in the world of PlayStation because, man, I've been playing through God of War 2018 once again, and after it came out, I beat it. I beat the Valkyries. I did pretty much everything in it. And I was like, that was really good. Might have been a little overhyped. I don't know what I was smoking back then because this game is incredible. The amount of content, the detail, the way it runs, everything is firing on all cylinders. So I'm really excited for the sequel. And you've heard me talk about the DualSense Pro a lot. You know I'm excited for it. So I was really hyped for this supposed event. And then we got a tweet from Cory Barlog where he said basically be patient, which let people know that the event wasn't happening. And now that has sort of evolved into an even crazier situation. So as it turns out, this was never going to be a state of play style event, which is super disappointing. It was just going to be announced in a blog post alongside special editions for the game, which I think kind of happened with Horizon Forbidden West, but around that game's releasing timing window thing where they announced the release date, they also put out that really cool 17-minute gameplay of the game. So everyone kind of thought, myself included, that would also be coming along with this God of War announcement. But there is still hope because this was supposedly going to happen on Thursday, last Thursday. Sony decided at the very last second not to do it. So that basically is telling us that maybe they want to have a bigger blowout style event for God of War, and the dream of getting this state of play alongside the DualSense Pro announcement is no longer dead. It's awesome. Of course, it's disappointing that we still don't know the release date for God of War Ragnarok, but Jason Schreier over at Bloomberg basically said the last thing he heard is that this game is 100% coming out this year. So if they just want to lock down the perfect release date for it and eventually let us know, that's fine. I'm pretty sure we are going to get this game in 2022, which makes this fall one of the best PlayStation falls in a long time. They haven't traditionally released games in the fall for a little bit. They usually release their games in August, but this year we're getting The Last of Us Part 1 just before Halloween, which is awesome. And then right after that, allegedly in November, we're going to have God of War Ragnarok. It's pretty much like the perfect 1-2 punch for the PlayStation 5, especially when Microsoft is really down right now after delaying their two biggest games, Redfall and Starfield. I just really hope this game comes out in the polished, perfect state we usually see Sony games come out in. Both Horizon Forbidden West and Gran Turismo 7 had launch issues. Like Horizon launched with some pretty bad graphical bugs that took a little bit to be fixed, but then they not only fixed them, they added in more features and made it run better, which is great. I would have just liked them to hold the game though and release it when it was actually finished, which ironically probably would have helped them in the long run because just like with the first game that released at the same time as Breath of the Wild, this game released at the same time as Elden Ring, and Elden Ring basically overpowered it like Breath of the Wild overpowered the first game. If they had just waited until the game was 100% finished and running perfectly, that probably wouldn't have even happened because after Elden Ring, this game really had no competition whatsoever. And then with Gran Turismo 7, this is Sony's first foray into being a live service publisher, and by most accounts, they did a really bad job. Like, they had a lot of insane microtransactions. They were screwing with the payouts of races to make you have to do more races and do more grinding, so you would want to spend more money to get better stuff earlier. They were doing all the classic stuff that we hate to see. They're not really the publisher to nickel and dime us this badly, at least, and that really bummed people out. So they sort of fixed it with some updates to Gran Turismo 7, and then they went right back with more recent ones. So they're in a weird spot right now. I don't think Jim Ryan is as bad as like Bob Chapek is over at Disney, but he's not doing as well of a job as his predecessor, Sean Layden. So hopefully he can kind of figure this stuff out, make sure God of War is 100% done when it releases, and give us something really cool to play this fall. Next up, let's talk about headsets. This time we're not talking about the H3, H7, and H9. We're talking about the PlayStation made and branded Pulse 3D wireless headset in midnight black, because right now it's on sale for $85, which is a pretty healthy discount. Now, comparing this sound quality wise to the H series of headsets, I think even if you get the wired version of the H series, it's gonna sound better overall than the Pulse wireless, which is kind of annoying because Sony is making these headsets and the Pulse wireless is around the same price as the H3 headset, which is weird, but you also get features for the same price on the Pulse side that the H3 doesn't have. Like, the H3 is wired, like I mentioned. The Pulse has a little dongle. The Pulse also doesn't have an external microphone that you have to swing up and down, so you could technically use it as a regular headphone set on your phone or a Nintendo Switch or a Steam Deck. Any of these devices will work with it. And it does have the added benefit of you can actually tune it inside the PlayStation settings by messing with the curve. If you Google change audio curve of Pulse wireless headset, there's basically a way you can tune it to really maximize the sound quality out of this headset and make it sound more premium. So if you want to save a little bit of money and have a wireless headset versus a wired one that's going to sound a little bit better, I think this is a great deal on the Pulse wireless headset. And also, the fact that they released it in midnight black is awesome. It reminds me of the original Pulse wireless headset, which came out with the PS3. I used to look at those things in GameStop all the time. I wish so badly I could afford these headphones, and I never actually got them, but I always wanted them. So now, being an adult with a job and disposable income, being able to buy this black Pulse wireless 3D feels pretty damn cool, to me at least. So if you want to pick one of these up while they're discounted, I have it linked down in the description. I would really appreciate it if you use that link, because I get a little bit of a kickback, and then that helps me afford my pile of these headsets at home to really stick it to GameStop. I don't actually have a pile of these. I have one set. They're pretty good. So between all this hardware news where we've got new monitors, we've got new headsets, we've got a rumored PS5 Pro, we've got a rumored Vita successor, one thing that's actually coming out that's getting lost in the shuffle is the PlayStation VR2. Sony's done a good job showing off big games that are going to release with this headset. They finally showed us actual gameplay from Horizon Call of the Mountain. And thankfully, this is not a sit in a boat and shoot arrows from a stationary position on an on-rail shooter type of game. This is one where you've got the full-fledged Horizon combat, but done in first person, where you can see your hands and everything like that. That's just one example of the games we're going to get. Of course, we're also going to get Resident Evil Village in VR, which is absolutely incredible. And yeah, I don't know why they're not talking about this headset more, because the thing is out in the wild. An indie developer actually just shared a picture of this headset with the Sense controllers. And honestly, I think Sony is kind of pressed for time here on getting this thing out, because not only are they competing with the biggest consumer VR headset, the Oculus Quest, or whatever it's called now, the Meta Quest 2, Valve is apparently working on their own competitor to the PlayStation VR2, which is going to be called Deckard, which is pretty funny. I think that's the internal name, obviously, for the prototype. So you have the Steam Deck, and then people data mined the update for Dota 2 that came out recently and found files for a headset called Deckard that's going to run SteamOS, and you won't need a computer to run all the games. So you'll be able to play your Steam VR games on this standalone headset, and if they get the price right, that becomes a true competitor to the PSVR 2, which needs to be tethered to the console with the single USB-C cable. Now, me personally, I would love for Sony to some way figure out how to make this headset standalone before they release it. They've got great tech with the screens, they've got a great look, it looks super durable, super comfortable, and if you are able to plug it into your PlayStation 5, it would be awesome to be able to play the native games, like in higher resolution, higher frame rate, better graphics, better textures on your PlayStation 5, but after you unplug it, you could play a pared down version of those games exactly like you can do with the Oculus Quest 2 on PC. You can download The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners straight to your headset. It looks pretty good. I'd call it like PS2 tier, PS3 tier, but when you plug it into your PC and run the cross-buy copy you get in the Oculus store off your PC, it looks like a full-fledged modern VR game. And that's where I think Sony's really dropping the ball here by not having that functionality. Either way, the fact that this is out in the wild basically tells us we're going to hear about it sooner rather than later. I'm just crossing my fingers that we get a PSVR 2 Pro down the line, I guess, that allows allows you to be mobile away from your console and not need to be tethered to it like an older style headset like the Valve Index or the PSVR1. Next up, let's talk about this new PS5 shortage that's basically plaguing everyone who hasn't been able to get a PS5 yet, which really sucks. So there's been this rumor, this controversy going around that Sony hasn't been as truthful as we thought they were, and they might be holding back PS5s to keep the value super high on them so that when they do eventually start showing up in stores in mass, people will still sell them out. Because right now, the attitude is if you see a PS5, even if you already have one, you're probably going to buy it because you could just flip it on StockX or eBay for around $700. PS5s were getting a little bit more available as 2022 went on, but just suddenly there's been an even bigger shortage of them, which has driven the prices back up. And now there's a game store that's literally selling a PS5 for over $1,000. Now, it seems like a mom and pop game shop. It's not like GameStop or anything like that where it's a corporation. So I'm assuming they've got the price as high as they do because they're assuming people are going to come in and try and haggle the price down, and then they'll get it for a little bit more than $700, which is around what they're selling for right now. It just really sucks to see stuff like this happening because the joy of gaming for me, I guess, is being able to do it. And I like those smaller stores where you can go in and get older games at a discounted price. The cases are usually a lot cleaner than they are at GameStop, and you get to talk to people who actually play games and enjoy them instead of having a membership plan shoved in your face for like 25 minutes. Like there was a point where GameStop wouldn't even sell you a used game unless you already had or signed up for their Power Up Rewards program. So the alternative was like going to a mom and pop game shop. I do that all the time. My favorite game shop is Gameplay on Venice Boulevard in LA where I live, and it's a great store because they don't shove all this stuff in your face and they have pretty fair prices, and everyone who works there loves talking about video games. Like the joy of going in there for me is talking to the guys who work there about all the games we're playing, and that's really cool. So yeah, it really sucks that the prices of the PS5s are jacked up right now. I hope if Sony is sitting on this rumored treasure trove of PS5s that they're doling out in small doses so that people still want to keep buying them, I hope they start releasing more of them because I feel like you could release all of them and have these things be readily available. And at least for the next few months, maybe even the next year, they'll sell out as fast as you're able to put them out there. People really want PS5s because now with games like Last of Us Part 1, Horizon Forbidden West, Gran Turismo 7, and God of War Ragnarok coming out in the future and already being out, there's really cool stuff to play on the PlayStation 5, and not allowing people to have one to play these games really sucks. I really want these PS4 ports to end. That's really what I want here. I want these PS4 ports to just go away, so they should release more PS5s into the wild so they have no justification for doing cross-gen releases. We're playing the long game here. And the last story I have for you guys today is about a new upgrade for your PlayStation 5 if you have the correct TV for it. So this is super annoying, but there's these TVs that came out from Sony last year that were called perfect for PlayStation because they supported the latest HDR tech, which is basically Sony's competitor to Dolby Atmos, and also variable refresh rate. But for some reason, a lot of these TVs didn't let you use those two features at the same time. So if you're using variable refresh rate, which you kind of need for the biggest game of the year, Elden Ring, you wouldn't be able to take advantage of these great HDR features. And it's actually been quite a few months since people brought this to the forefront as an issue, but thankfully Sony just put out a patch for these TVs that allows this HDR tech and VRR to run at the same time. What I would really like to see Sony do though is partner up with AMD to figure out how to get FSR 2.0 on the PS5. If you guys didn't hear, that just came to the Xbox Series X console, where FSR is basically AMD's competitor to DLSS. And if you don't know what that is, basically what it does is your TV will run the game at 4K, right? Like it'll be a 4K resolution, all the HUD and everything like that will be 4K, but then the internal resolution of the game will be like 1080p, and then they use AI and an algorithm to fix the pixels and upscale it to 4K. And DLSS has been really good for a long time. I use it on my NVIDIA graphics card on my PC. FSR has been noticeably very bad and not even worth using for a long time, but they just updated it to 2.0. And ironically, the first two games you can take advantage of this new technology with are Deathloop, a PS5 exclusive currently, if you don't count PC, and God of War 2018 on PC. And now the Xbox Series X gets this tech, but the first two games you can do it on are PlayStation 5 games on PC. I don't really get that. I'm sure Microsoft just shelled out a whole bunch of money to keep it exclusive, and frankly, I think that's They really shouldn't be doing stuff like that because AMD also makes the chip in the PS5, and if they can just turn it on as a feature for the Series X, I guarantee you they can do the same thing just as fast on the PlayStation 5. The other conspiracy theory option we have here though is what we saw with Dolby Atmos and Sony wanting to make their own version of it. Like, there are other alternatives out there to DLSS and FSR and their engine level. There's a new thing, I forget what it's called. It starts with a T. It's in Unreal Engine 5 though. Ghostwire Tokyo has it on PC, and it's like their own Unreal version of this same technology where you're running at a lower internal resolution and upscaling it. So Sony's probably looking at the playing field here and being like, well, we're partnering up with AMD. We could pay a licensing fee to them to get FSR on our console, but they can also be looking at Epic Games saying we're invested heavily into this publisher who also has their own thing called TSR, which I was just talking about. It's like temporal super resolution. They all kind of do the same thing. And then they could also be sitting there being like, well, if they have an engine level one, AMD has their own graphics card level one, Nvidia has their own graphics card level one, why don't we make PlayStation super resolution and just make it the same thing but keep it internal so we don't have to pay any licensing fees? If you lay all of those options out, the one I could definitely see them go with is the Unreal version, just because they have so much money invested in Unreal and they could get that exclusively while Xbox has FSR 2.0 exclusively. And if you compare how all of these work in Ghostwire Tokyo, TSR is right in the middle. FSR looks okay, TSR looks good, and DLSS looks the best. DLSS is just never going to be an option though on consoles because that's an Nvidia exclusive feature and the consoles use AMD chips, and I don't think AMD would be cool with Nvidia running that stuff on there. But one console ironically that could benefit in the future from this technology is the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo is sitting over there all alone, being the only console maker that uses Nvidia for some reason. And I wish these other manufacturers would take a look at Nvidia too, because I've had much better luck with Nvidia tech on the PC side. The reason they don't is AMD stuff is cheaper. It's really as simple as that. They can put cheaper parts in the console and get the price down while also losing less money on it overall. Regardless, if you have this correct Sony TV, you just got a huge graphics upgrade. And hopefully in the future we get this other graphics upgrade that would benefit a lot more people, like everyone with a PS5.